Hey, everybody, welcome. Today on the Monday Morning Breakthroughs, we have Ginny Robertson. And um, I am going to read her bio, but then I'm going to shout her out further because Ginny is an amazing woman doing a lot of amazing things in the world. But here's a little bit about her. For 24 years, Ginny Robertson has offered women entrepreneurs opportunities for deep connection and supported them in being seen and heard so they can share their gifts and make their unique difference. She's the founder of the On Purpose Woman Global Community and On Purpose Woman magazine, the host of the Real Women, Real Purpose talk show on YouTube, and a speaker, author, and workshop facilitator. Her signature workshop is getting out of your own way for today. And part of my little shout out is just going to be to do a little show and tell because she is the lead author of this beautiful book, On Purpose Woman, the complete holistic guide for spiritual entrepreneurs as well. Ginny, welcome. You have 20 minutes to give us a breakthrough. You ready?
I am ready. Thank you, Laura. Hi, everyone. It's so nice to see some of you that I know. I feel really at home here. And hello to those of you I haven't had the privilege to meet yet. Garrett, grab a pen and some paper because I'm going to put you to work. And I'm going to be talking about three things that get in our way, that can get in our way. I just picked three. I do a full day workshop on this. There are hundreds of things that can get in our way. These are three of my favorites. And I'm going to tell you what they are up front, and I'm going to go into more detail about each of them. The first one is you get in your way when you're not clear. And I'm talking specifically business here, when you're not clear about what you want and why you want it. The second one is there's a bigger payoff for not doing it than there is for doing it. And three, your mindset is stuck in an old story. And so I'll start with you're not clear about what you want and why you want it. So bring to mind a business goal that you have, and it'd be great if it's one that you've had for a while. Maybe you're still thinking about it. Maybe you haven't taken a first step, or maybe you've taken some steps and you feel stuck, or you put it off to the side. You're not sure you really want it anymore. So just write that down like this. I want, finish the sentence, just one sentence about that goal, and take about 10 seconds. Don't overthink it. When we lack clarity about what we want and why we want it, it can lead to confusion, overwhelm, and fear. And so when you look at the sentence you just wrote down, there's probably some action words attached to it. Words like create. Raise your hand if you've got any of these words. Create, increase, grow, learn, expand. Nobody's raising their hand. You don't have any of those words? Thank you, Lori. Usually when we have goals, we have action steps attached to them, and the action steps are really important. But I think there's a step before that, and it's the step that can really help us get out of our way. But more than that, it can inspire us. It can keep us going when it gets scary, when we don't know how to do something, when we feel like nobody wants what we have. And my goal list, if they're just full of doings, I'm not inspired by the doing of my list. I am more inspired by the being of my list and the experience that I want to have. So instead of having action words in there, look and see if you can find an adjective that describes what you want. What is the experience that you are looking for? And the really good news about that is once we know the experience that we're looking for, because I have like three, and it covers my entire life, not just my business. It covers how I want to live. And I'll tell you mine in a minute. But bring to mind, this descriptive words, these adjectives. Because when we have doing words, verbs, now again, they're important when we get into action, but this is before we get into action. They bring to mind imagined situations, like we can imagine ourselves actually doing these things. But descriptive words bring to mind imagined experiences. And I really believe that that's what we all crave. I know it's what I crave is the experience of what I'm doing. Can anybody agree with that? Like you want to feel a certain way. And that's what inspires me. Sometimes the doing is really hard, right? And it's time consuming and it's challenging, and we may not know what to do next, and maybe we're not getting any support we feel. But if we're really clear on the experience and why we want the experience, then that can really help us get through those times when we're kind of stuck and getting in our own way. There is just a subtle distinction between those two, but I think it's a really important distinction. So I'll give you an example from my life. One of my 2024 goals is to grow the On Purpose Woman global community. Now, I've had that on my list in the past. In the early days, before I started looking at this a bit differently, I would concentrate on numbers. I would say, well, how many women do I want to grow it by? And how much money will that bring me? Those are really important. I am not saying they need to be looked at. They need to be in place as well, because we need tangible goals so we know how we're doing. But I also, that kept me more in a sales mode sometimes, like all the time. And, there's a time to sell and there's a time to connect and really communicate with another person in that deeper way. And so I would find myself just kind of always looking, oh, is that person going to join? Oh, I wonder what can I do here to get that person to join? And what I had to do is just relax and know that my three adjectives, one of them, you can have hyphenated adjectives if you want. My three adjectives are connected, conscious, and heart-centered. I know that if I go through my day, my life, really honing in on those things, that I am looking at connection first. I'm looking for those women who want to connect, looking for those women who want to be seen and heard, that I am fully conscious when I'm with those women, that I am present, and that my heart is open. Anytime I'm getting on Zoom or I'm on my car going to a meeting, I always do this thing, it's almost like a meditation, except my eyes are open when I'm in the car, that my heart is wide open because that's how I want to show up. And so I did this again during the visioning process I did in January. So if I know the experience I want to have, I can then know that the perfect women who want that experience as well are going to show up. And then it's up to me to see if they, to move them into that space of becoming a member. Does that make sense? It's just a completely like flipped way of looking at it, I think. But then we do have to deal with the numbers, right? Because I do have a number. I don't typically share those numbers. I keep those to myself because I'm really good at motivating myself with numbers. And so I can still do all the needed sales activity, but I just do it in a different way. And I do it because I'm motivated and inspired by the experience, not by the numbers, because I could go into fear with numbers. Anybody else have that experience when you're looking at just numbers? You start to get a little fearful, a little like, oh, what's the word I'm looking for? Desperate, maybe. Oh, I hope somebody gets it. I hope somebody buys it. And so tapping into the experience I desire really excites me and it helps me to move through the obstacles more quickly. So the second one is not doing it has a bigger payoff than doing it. There's a payoff for every single thing that we do in life. Sometimes we don't recognize it as a payoff because it looks completely nuts. And I do workshops on this, and I'll say to a woman, well, could it be this? She goes, oh no, why would I want that? And I said, well, it's kind of what you're saying. I didn't say you wanted it. I'm just saying that's what's showing up. It doesn't have to look sane. It doesn't have to look like it makes sense. And I'll give you an example. I do a getting out of your own way workshop, or I had done them before COVID a couple of times a year in person. And a woman came who I didn't know, and she talked about her hoarding. She was, and it sounded like it was more about just piles. It wasn't like she didn't have a cleanliness issue. It was just piles of things everywhere. They were kind of neat piles, but there was a path from the front door into their living spaces. And she was there because she needed to change something. And her husband, he was just at wit's end. He was actually threatening to leave. Through the course of the day, she was really having a challenge coming up with the payoff. And then all of a sudden, something I said clicked. And she went, oh no. And she said, my husband took a job out of state without even consulting with me 4 years ago. And I had to move across the country and away from everything that I knew. I have been angry with him ever since. And that's when this started. I know how crazy it makes him. So I'm doing it to punish him. So her payoff was I get to get my revenge with my husband. Now, until that payoff, and I think she started to see until the price that she was paying for that got bigger than the payoff, she was not going to change anything until what she really wanted, which oddly enough, or not oddly enough, was a better relationship with her husband. And so you see how crazy that stuff can get in our way because it's not conscious. And I don't think you have to go have years of talk therapy to kind of get to that. Sometimes it's as simple as, why do I keep doing this? And sometimes it'll just like come to you and you'll go, oh, but that doesn't make sense. I don't really want that. Well, nobody wants some things like that, but it still is the truth because it's yours. And so when you look at your goals and what you might have to give up, it could be maybe less time with family or friends if you get your goal. That's something you have to look at. That's a valid kind of thing. Oh, I might have to give that up, but if that's lurking in the background and you're not making it conscious, that will be running the show and you won't even know why. If we know why, then we can make a conscious decision about if that is a concern of mine, how can I structure things so that I can have time with family and friends. I can have time to do those things I deem are really important to me. It doesn't have to make sense. And I remember another woman who realized that she wasn't moving forward because she had this opinion of herself as someone who really couldn't do what she wanted to do. And so she would have to give up the payoff for having that opinion. You might say, well, what's the payoff for having that low opinion of ourselves? Well, we don't have to take a risk. We don't have to start something and fail. We don't have to listen to other people tell us how we can't do it. We already know, so we don't even have to get input. And these things are so insidious and they're so big sometimes that they really are running the show. One of my favorite authors and speakers who's no longer on the planet was Wayne Dyer. And he had this thing that he said all the time. It's like the wake is driving the boat rather than the boat causing the wake. So something back there is causing us to take this action or inaction right now. And we really need to get a handle on what that is because, once I started to realize some of mine, it was kind of laughable. I'd be like, oh my gosh, really, Jenny? And sometimes it takes longer to get to some of this stuff because again, we're measuring it like it's supposed to make sense. And that sane, smart, brilliant people wouldn't want that. Does that make sense to everybody here? Okay. Excuse me. The last one is, let me make sure I finish this. Oh no, I want you to write something down. So write this down. If I reach my goal of, and then write down what you wrote in the first thing, I might have to give up blank and just see what comes up. Don't overthink it. I'm going to give you 15 seconds and just see what comes up for you. And if anybody's having any little ahas or anything that you would feel comfortable putting in the chat, I would really like to see some of them. So just a reminder that until the payoff for meeting your goal is bigger than the payoff for not meeting your goal, or until the price you're paying for not meeting your goal is bigger than the payoff that you're getting, you won't change anything. You won't really go after it and make it happen. And you'll waste time and you'll beat yourself up. So it's really important, I think, to do some work around the payoffs if you haven't done that yet. I'm going to take, anybody have a question or a comment? Because I'm just rolling right along. So,
Well, we'll wait till the end and do that a little
okay,
bit later.
great. So the last one is, Your mindset is mired in an old story. So anybody besides me make up stories about the meaning of something that happened? And while the event may be true, the meaning we give it may not be. And I'm going to tell you a story. It's a two-part story. Back in the mid 80s, I was working, my career was in mortgage banking and finance, and I had a fairly high level at a bank in the DC area. And I was planning to go to a conference in DC, not DC, New York City the next week for the Mortgage Bankers Association. And the president of the bank that I worked for came into my office and said that the association had called and they had had a cancellation in their customer service. They were doing a panel on customer service and that they needed a replacement and I was going to do it. And I said, "Oh, I don't do that. It's not really my thing." And he said, "This is not a request." Now, I didn't think I would get fired if I hadn't done that, if I'd said no, but I knew it wouldn't bode well for what I thought was going to be a long-term career. That was before I decided to leave it all when I turned 40. But what happened in that moment that I said, "I don't do that, it's not my thing," is I asked myself, I heard this voice that said, "How do you know you don't do that? You've never done it." And I was curious about that. I've been doing a lot of work on myself. Things were opening up. I was asking all kinds of questions. I was hitting all kinds of pain and all kinds of junk was just showing up. So I was open to being curious about this question. Now, I did go. It was the following week. There were three of us on this big panel. There were 350 people roughly in the room, but I got to sit down in front of a microphone. And as he said to me, I had one of the best customer service departments in the industry. I knew my stuff, so it was a little bit easier. I didn't have to walk a stage and keep people entertained. I just had to tell them, how I did things. But when I was, in between all that and after I got back, I'm thinking, all of my life I've been saying that. Anytime I was asked to public speak or do anything that was out front, I don't do that. It's not my thing, is what would come up for me. I wasn't shy at all. I mean, I was out there. I was like Susie High School and, doing all kinds of activities. I was even president of the Thespians Club, which, is an acting club, but I didn't act. I like to run things. So, but I didn't do any of that. So all of a sudden, things were opening up. I had this memory. This memory came back to me of something that happened when I was 7 years old. We were Methodists and we had missed Palm Sunday at our church and showed up on Easter Sunday. And my Sunday school class was doing a little pageant for the church. And because I hadn't been there on Palm Sunday, I didn't get a part. And so my Sunday school teacher told me that I could just recite this poem, and she gave me this poem to read. Everybody else had had their stuff all week, and they had all memorized their parts. So I was a fairly precocious little girl, and I had this great kind of photographic memory. I could memorize things really easy. So I decided that I was not going to be the only one there who didn't know her part. I had 15 minutes. So I memorized my part, left it with my mother. I was so confident. Walk up to the front of the church, and if you've ever been in a Christian church on Easter, it's the walls are bulging with people. It's standing room only. It was full, and I started to recite my poem. And I can't tell you now if it was 2 lines or 10. I don't even remember. But all I remember is that at some point, could have been 5 seconds in or a minute in, not only did I not know what I was going to say next, I didn't even know where I was. Has anybody ever had that experience? Things went kind of black, they went dark. I had a buzzing in my ears. This was all coming back to me so clearly. And I just stood there. And some man in the church laughed. And I bolted. I ran down the aisle and out the door of the church. And a little bit later, my mother came out and I was inconsolable. There was a weeping willow tree there that had the things that were hanging down, and I flung myself under it and sobbed. I was kind of dramatic with it. My mother came out. She was trying to console me. I was inconsolable. I was embarrassed. I was more than embarrassment. I was humiliated. And she let me stay out there for the rest of the service. After the service, people came out. They were telling my parents, "Oh, that was so cute." I heard one man say that he was falling asleep until that happened, and that woke him right up. And I was so angry because it wasn't cute. I was feeling 7-year-old deep humiliation. And what I remember is that we never talked about that. My mother said, "Don't worry, everybody will forget about it by next week." And nobody ever walked me through it. Nobody ever told me what to do with it. Now, what I realized then, all these years later, is that I had a couple of truths that came out of that day. And the truths are, well, I'm going to take you through this, what I call the cycle that we go through when we have a story that we may have an old story that our mindset is tied to. I had an experience. My experience was this feeling of humiliation. My memory, and memory in this respect, I love this definition of memory, recorded information from a distorted point of view. Doesn't mean it's not true. It just means that we can look at it and see. My memory was right on. It was true. But my perception of the memory had been skewed. My belief then was a feeling of certainty and not necessarily true. And my belief is that if I speak in public, two things will happen. One is I will forget what I'm going to say, and two is people will laugh and I will feel humiliated. Then the belief causes an identity, and I conform to that belief. My identity was, I'm not a public speaker. I don't do that. And then I had all kinds of thoughts and feelings about it, which confirmed the belief and the identity, and it all just got real solidified. And I took actions based on that, and I got a result. Now, the results had never been bad for me. I didn't know what I was missing. I never did it. But they could have been, but they just hadn't been to that point. Typically, we're told when we don't get something that we want or we miss a goal that we go back to the action step and just do something different. I had to go back to the memory step and repair my relationship with the memory. I made up the story about people laughed at me. This man chuckled. I think he thought it was cute. I didn't think it was cute. And then I made up everything after that that kept me for another like 30 years not speaking in public. Now, why is that important? Because I wouldn't be here talking to you right now. I wouldn't base most of my work is around speaking. Most of what I love to do is around speaking. And so it wasn't 6 months after that, I had been a client of a seminar company, a transformational seminar company. They invited me to go through their training program for a year. And I'm like, why do they think I could do that? But I said yes, because now I knew something that I didn't know before. Excuse me, I'm going to wrap up now. Find my card here. So I want to wrap up this piece with just saying that we can change the memory and we can change everything that comes after when we shift our perception about the meaning that we gave it. Doesn't mean the memory was false. It just means that I can shift my relationship to it and what I perceived as what was going on there. So let's see. Yeah, that's the cycle. So if you want to write down the steps in these cycles, if somebody wants to get this, I went through it really quick. I know I would be happy to stick your email in the chat, and I'd be happy to send that to you if you like. And I just want to thank you for your time and your attention. And I guess we'll take some questions now. I'm impressed. 30 seconds over 20 minutes. There we go. I know I talked fast, y'all.
um, Ginny, thank you so much for what you do in the world and for being here today to share it with everyone.
You're welcome, Laura.
I'm so happy to be a part of the On Purpose Woman community. You guys, there's opportunities to speak, there's opportunities to write in the magazine. So, down below this show, we're going to have some notes for you so you can come join the community and you can check out all of the amazing opportunities that Ginny has. Is including some in-person opportunities here in Maryland. So that is fun because we can all get together and give each other some hugs. But there are also many online opportunities all throughout the month to connect and gather with this amazing, amazing group. Ginny, any last words for today?
Just know that if you find yourself, doing the same thing over and over again, going after a goal, there's probably one of two things. One is that you really don't want it. And that's not the other thing this exercise will do. It will get you clear on whether you really want it or not. Wouldn't that be a great thing to know sooner than later? So you can just get it off your plate and try something different. Or you're the one that's keeping it from happening. It's either one of those three things that I told you or a myriad of other things. I think these are three of the really big ones. And
Thank
Lisa,
you.
could you put that those links in for me. Thank you. I
Yeah,
do
well,
workshops on this, so if anybody wants to get on my email list, you can, if you're not already, Lisa's putting the information
thank you,
in.
Ginny. Um, all right, you guys, just remember that Brave Healer Productions is here to help you share your brave words in the world in a bigger way. And join us for our next Monday morning breakthroughs. We have these the first and third Monday of every month. The info is down below for you. Whether it's writing in one of our expert collaborations, joining our writer circle, teaching your course on the Brave Healer Transformation School platform, maybe you want to come to the retreat in New York. We do this and everything we do with the spirit of collaboration, which is business building magic, y'all. So reach out to us for info on anything you heard us mention today. Until then, remember, your words change the world when you're brave enough to share them. So it is time to be brave. See you next time, everyone.